Hello, huge movie fanatic Nate, stopping on by. This time I'm coming at you to do another one of my famed movie/Blu-ray reviews. Today I'm coming at you to review the movie and Blu-ray of Blood Simple. This is the very first Coen Brothers movie ever made, I guess released in 1984. First I'll be reviewing the movie, then I'll talk about this Criterion Blu-ray that came out of the movie in 2016. So, my history with Blood Simple goes back to, I can't remember exactly, it could be the late 80s, early 90s for sure. I can remember, Dad on Friday nights, I think pretty much every Friday night we'd go to the video store and rent a movie, and he must have heard about this title through the grapevine. I wish I could remember if it was late 80s or early 90s when we saw it, but like I say, for sure it was the early 90s at the latest when we saw, rented and saw Blood Simple for the very first time. It very well might be the only time I've seen it, and then I probably never have seen it since the very first time I saw it until I just decided to buy the Criterion Blu-ray on the 50% off sale. I figured 50% off, $20, haven't seen Blood Simple for such a long time, pick it up and whatever. I don't necessarily regret it, but at the same time I'll give you my thoughts on the movie, having seen it probably for the second time. First times in probably 30 years or so, or second time, first time since I saw it for the first time 30 years ago. Does that make any sense? I hope so. So this is a difficult movie to review, and traditionally, I don't know, my reviews I'll just do a beat by beat, and I'll do all kinds of, I'll do reviews for people that have seen it, but since it's possible that, people watch reviews also of movies they haven't seen, I think because this one has so many, this movie has so many twists and turns and unexpected things that happen in it, I think I'll spare you a beat by beat and I won't spoil the movie. It'll be a very short movie review because basically the movie just takes place in Texas. It's the first Joel and Ethan Coen movie ever made. I think it's the first time Frances McDormand would ever appear in a movie as well. First time they worked together, and it would, spark the relationship between her and Joel Coen that I think is still ongoing. I don't know all of their personal history, but I gotta say, not regarding Frances McDormand as a particularly attractive woman, I gotta say, in this movie, which I think she's around the age of 24 or whatever, I gotta say, even in this movie, or Frances McDormand was kind of attractive in her 20s. This movie revolves around this. It's like I guess it's not a love triangle. It's the situation where this woman is leaving her rich husband, and for this other guy who's not rich and just everyday Joe kind of guy or whatever, and basically it's a very simple premise. Obviously it's a low budget movie. I want to say they raised around $800,000 to do this movie. I mean, it's not as low budget as Evil Dead. I mean, that being shot on 16mm. I mean, Sam Raimi was probably very, very jealous that they were able to, the Coen brothers were able to do their first movie on 35mm, although I would contend that Evil Dead is the superior film, or I definitely would rather watch Evil Dead than Blood Simple, which can be evidenced by the fact that I haven't seen this in probably 30 years, and I own many I've never owned Blood Simple until now either, and I own many home video incarnations of the Evil Dead. But story simply revolves around a woman just leaving her rich, presumably abusive husband. We don't know if he's abusive or not. We don't really know why she's leaving, but she's leaving the rich husband for this everyday Joe kind of guy, and then basically the rich husband, just disgusted by this and the idea that she's with this other guy, actually puts out a hit on her and wants to have her killed. And that's pretty much all I can really say about this movie without spoiling it. So it's going to be a very short movie review. Incidentally, this movie does feature a couple of faces that were relatively known at the time. Probably the most expensive two actors, one of which of course is Emmett Walsh and Dan Hedaya pre-Commando. That's, I think, the first movie I can remember ever seeing Dan Hedaya in, and just being the ultimate bad guy of Muscle Man Arnold Schwarzenegger in my childhood. grew up movie. I grew up with Commando. I still got to review that movie. But anyway, and so they actually did manage to afford a couple of actual actors, Dan Hedaya, M. Emmett Walsh, and I gotta say that the only things I could remember about this movie, having seen it potentially just one time 30 years ago, is pretty much the only thing that really stands out in this movie is M. Emmett Walsh and the end scene where, you know, he gets his hand stabbed and shooting the gun through the bathroom wall into a dark room to reveal, you know, the bright holes and the light streaks coming through. My dad really thought that was cool, and I'd agree, except for I don't understand why there's got to be so many different streaks of light pointing in so many different directions. How hard would it have been just to have simply put a big, you know, movie light that would approximate the light on the bathroom ceiling, and just have, I just don't understand why there's so many streaks of light, but whatever, they were young. But having seen the movie again, I understand why I've never owned this movie and potentially only seen it once up until this point, is because it's a very depressing movie, and in my opinion, I don't even think the first twist happens like until like 20 or 30 minutes into the movie. In my opinion, like the first quarter of the movie is relatively not even necessarily interesting, and for me the movie does get more interesting as it goes on, because it's like, oh wow, that was a twist, and then it's just like, oh wow, that's a twist, and it begins, you know, there towards the middle and the end of the movie, there's this funny between the, you know, the wife who's leaving the rich husband and the guy she's leaving with. There becomes this very funny unspoken, I don't think it's ever revealed, which is kind of funny, this non-communication, this of you know, the guy that she left with assuming she did something that she didn't do, and her wondering why he's acting so weird, and that's the aspect of this movie that is really funny, and I don't think it's ever revealed to either of the characters what the other one was thinking in regards to that, and we'll just say the guy she left the rich husband for basically took care of what he thought she did when in fact she didn't do it. So you know, for me, watching it again for the first time probably in 30 years, I will say that the middle part of the movie, or you know, once the first quarter gets out of the way and the actual, you know, fun stuff is starting to happen, it does, you know, because I can basically more or less call myself, after 30 years, a first-time viewer of this movie, more or less, because I didn't remember anything about it other than the knife in the hand and the bullet holes through the dark wall or whatever, the wall into the dark room. And so I will say that the twists that happen in the movie, you know, quarter of the way into it and for the rest of the movie, and are entertaining and fun to behold. And it's one of these movies where I regard it as more, I don't know, it'd be hard to watch this movie, in my opinion, on repeat viewings and enjoy it as much as like the first time. For me, this is one of those rare movies where it's almost like, I mean, what's the point almost of even watching it on repeat viewings, because once you know what's going to happen, or it's almost not as fun. Like maybe the first time seeing it unfold is what makes it so fun, and wondering what's going to happen next. So I don't imagine I'll be watching this movie very often as a result, and that's one of the reasons why I'm not spoiling it at all, because it's just like half of the fun, or the majority of the fun of this movie is the unexpected twists and wondering what's going to happen next. So it's definitely a strength of this movie, its scenario and the way it unfolds and things like that. And I will say, for being, you know, the Coen brothers' first film, and I would imagine they're in their early to mid-20s and making this, along with first-time feature-length cinematographer Barry Sonnenfeld and first-time, you know, music score writer Carter Burwell, who will stick with them. I think does he do the music for every one of their movies? I don't remember, but I don't really pay attention to Cole or Ethan or the Coen brothers much anymore. I used to like them when I was a teenager, but I've since I don't really like their stuff much anymore, and which is fine. Their tone, as I got older, just the depressive overtones to basically all of their movies, except for maybe Hudsucker Proxy, just got old. And I don't know, as I got older, I just didn't want to deal with the depressing, dark undertones that seem to hang over the majority of the Coen brothers movies. As I said, I like Coen brothers movies much more as a teenager, and then just actually coming out of, me and my dad saw No Country for Old Men, and that was probably the worst I felt coming out of a movie theater in my entire life, even worse than after coming out of Jason Goes to Hell. I was just like, I felt so low after coming out of that movie that it was like the end of Coen Brothers for me. I don't think I've seen another one of their movies afterwards. They just have this inexplicable way to just turn my day into just a shit fest. So, I don't know, I guess that's pretty much the gist of the movie, all I can really say without spoiling it. I will say that I forgot how cool the end scene is, you know, between the cat and mouse quote-unquote suspenseful scene, I'll just say, featuring Frances McDormand and M. Emmett Walsh. I think it was absolutely fantastic. As I was, sitting there watching that end scene, I was like, maybe I can up the star rating of the movie because of that, and I'm just like, nah, I can just say I appreciate that scene, but I'm not going to raise the star rating of the movie just for that. But basically my whole takeaway from a movie, or from Blood Simple, is it's just like, I don't really go in for these kind of, once again, it's just kind of a depressing movie, and being a child of divorce and parents separating and all this and that, and that was pretty much happening right around the time this movie came out and stuff like that. And I don't like, being a child of divorce and parents splitting up, even though there's no children involved in this, with the couple in this in this movie, in this relationship in this movie, it's still, being a child of divorce or whatever, it's still just depressing to see a woman leaving the guy and the guy getting all goofy, and it's not a movie that I guess the more I talk about it, the more I kind of regret buying it. But the extras on the Blu-ray kind of made it worth it. And let's face it, I mean, the Blu-ray looks awesome and stuff, but watching the movie again for the first time in probably 30 years, I mean, it was definitely a very competent first outing by the Coen brothers, and but once again, I can definitely say that, but once again, this isn't my kind of movie where it's just like the overall feeling of the movie is just kind of drab and bleak and depressing. And I mean, it's just like, I personally don't understand why people would want to watch movies like this, because for me, movies are a way to escape life, and why would you want to watch movies that are like life, or even more depressing than life, or just as depressing as life, or whatever. So, not a fan of the movie per se. After I watched this, I was trying to think of what my favorite Coen Brothers movie would be currently, and it's just like, God, I was listing them off in my mind, and I was just like, God, I really don't necessarily like Coen Brothers movies anymore at all. But if I had to pick one, if they say you can't say that, you got to pick one, I'd probably go with Hudsucker Proxy at this moment. But that one's not so bleak and depressing, and partially probably because Sam Raimi had involvement as well. But I guess that'll be my review for Blood Simple, the movie. I'm gonna, it probably deserves more stars than this, but I'm just gonna go 2 3/4 stars out of 4 stars for Blood Simple, because it's just not my fare at the end of the day. It's not my kind of movie. It's just more on the bleak, depressing side. And when you watch a movie like this and see the Dan Hedaya character get all jealous and goofy and want to kill his wife over this, it's just like, God, man, just grow a pair of balls, and just like, God, you're rich, you've got all kinds of hot women probably coming into the bar. I mean, you're rich, you're going to be able to replace her. Why do you have to take it so personally? And you just want to tell, how in horror movies you always have people yelling at the screen, don't go in there. I just want to tell the Dan Hedaya character in this movie, just don't, why do you want to kill her? Just let her go. Who gives a shit? Go get another woman. It's not like Frances McDormand was, that hot or anything like that, even in her 20s. But anyway, I digress. I think that'll be my review of the movie Blood Simple, the very first Cole and Ethan brothers, Jesus Christ, Joel and Ethan Coen brothers, frickin' mother. The very first Coen brothers movie. Like I say, Sam Raimi was probably jealous as all shit that their first movie was 35, but I wouldn't sweat it too much, Sam. You got the better first movie, in my opinion. Another thing that's really funny is, halfway through the movie or whatever, there's the shovel that becomes a, you know, a pretty big prop in the movie, and this guy who's, you know, burying someone wearing a button-down, is he wearing a blue button-down shirt and a shovel that very much mirrors what Evil Dead 2 would go on to be, which a lot of the imagery surrounding Evil Dead 2, and even Evil Dead to a certain extent, had, you know, deal with this guy in a blue button-down burying bodies with this shovel and stuff. So it makes you wonder if, you know, Joel, you know, the Coen brothers and Sam Raimi had this a little bit of this little like, oh, let's share a little bit of the same imagery in our, you know, first movie / couple movies or whatever. You know, it'd go on to be the imagery that, you know, is featured in the first Evil Dead and also the second Evil Dead, with the guy in the blue button-down shirt and killing people and or burying people with the shovel. So kind of an interesting thing I kind of thought about when I watched this movie for the first time in 30 years again. So now on to my review of the Criterion Blu-ray that came out in 2016. One thing I will say about this cover, one thing that I'm not really, you know, having bought in some Criterion Blu-rays in last month in July, one thing I'm not completely crazy about the more, you know, Criterion Blu-rays I got is just, I don't know, I'm a big, huge, like, original poster art kind of a guy, and it's just like very rare occasions will Criterion like actually use like the original poster art, like their release of Being There that I reviewed the movie and Blu-ray of. Was it last year? I think so. They actually used the original theatrical poster. I think they did. I think it's like zoomed in, like cropped, but at least they used the original theatrical poster. And I guess I kind of wish they'd do that more often. But in this case, I do like the imagery they ended up using. I guess my biggest problem is just maybe, I don't know, using the, you know, doing the title and the neon lights kind of thing. I don't know about that. Maybe I'd just as soon have the title and the font that the original poster was. Not, you know, not that I'm a big fan of the movie. It's just one of the things, having bought more Criterion Blu-rays last month than I usually buy in a year, it's just something that I kind of realized. It's just like they're big on making their own, a lot of times their own artwork for releases, which I'm not too incredibly keen on. But in this case, I think, except for, you know, maybe the neon title, I think the art, the imagery, which is like probably just a frame grab from the movie, the imagery of the cover is pretty cool. As you can see here, director-approved Blu-ray Special Edition features. We've got new restored 4K digital transfer approved by cinematographer Barry Sonnenfeld and filmmakers Joel and Ethan Coen, with 5.1 surround DTS master audio soundtrack. So when I watched this particular disc, I didn't watch it on my 5.1 setup. I just watched it on a smaller HD TV with just the TV speakers, so I can't comment on the 5.1 remix that was done for this movie. I'm not exactly sure when the 5.1 of this was done in the supplements. Skip Leavesy, or however the hell you say his name, Mr. Sound Guy, mentioned that they redid the sound in 2000, so I don't know if this is the remix from 2000 or what. One thing also that I noticed last month when I was buying more Criterion Blu-rays in the 50% off sale was that Criterion really used to be more keen on original sound, original stereo surround or original mono, and then a lot of times if there was a 5.1 version of that, they'd also include that as well. What I've been noticing a lot last month when I was buying a lot of Criterion Blu-rays is it's just like they seem to be leaving that tradition behind, with titles like this and also Fast Times at Ridgemont High, with releases that were, you know, in the theater and originally released in mono, you know, simply just featuring the 5.1, you know, soundtrack and not including original mono at all, which I kind of think is a little bit of a problem, me being an original mono enthusiast and original mono guy. It was just like, God, I wonder who the hell's decision that was at Criterion to just like leave original mono tracks behind if there were 5.1 tracks available. That's something obviously that if you guys are a long-time viewer of my channel, already know that it's a big no-no. I think, and for me, the most important thing with the release of an older movie is if it was originally released and distributed in mono, they had damn well better include the original mono soundtrack. And if other mixes have come down the road since then, like in the case of this movie, like a new 5.1 remix had been made at some point down the road, definitely include that for people who would rather listen to that. But for enthusiasts, I just feel like it's a really it's really a shame to let the original sound just basically die and fade away into, you know, the Netherlands of time or whatever. As a movie enthusiast and a home video enthusiast, I find that to be kind of a big problem in, you know, like restoring a movie and making a movie available and, you know, jazzing it up for future generations. Definitely jazz up the image, but I think original sound should be available as well as the, you know, the newly remixed 5.1/stereo sound. Another thing that I found a little disheartening to hear on the kind of, you know, I'll talk about this in a minute, this kind of whatever commentary, pseudo commentary session with Barry Sonnenfeld and the Coen brothers, was that Criterion apparently got rid of some, you know, things that were mistakes in the movie, very much like what Anchor Bay did with the Evil Dead Blu-ray. And how do I feel about that? I don't know. I mean, I guess these are things that never should have existed there in the first place and were never things that were intended to be there. So I guess I don't have as a big a problem with that as I do with not including original mono. But I do feel like it's kind of revisionist, almost, you know, George Lucas kind of stuff going on after, you know, after the fact, after all. And I'm not 100% on board with, you know, getting, you know, taking things out of the image digitally that were always there that weren't supposed to be there. I mean, it's hit or miss. I guess I can understand that they weren't supposed to be there, you know, but it's just creepy when you start messing with a movie that's, you know, over 30 years old, and you just start changing the sound and just leaving the original mono behind and taking things out and fixing things. And it's just like, I guess it's just a matter of opinion at that point, you know, how much is too much and this and that and whatever. But that's what they did with this Criterion release. So continuing on with the special edition features, we've got new conversation between Sonnenfeld and the Coens about the film's look, featuring, I don't know how to pronounce this, telestrator video illustrations. Basically, I think it's just over an hour long, more or less. It's kind of a goofy ass situation where it's like it's almost like a commentary session, but so you see the movie with them talking over it, but then we'll also cut to video of them sitting in front of monitors looking at it. And I think Barry Sonnenfeld is a little overdressed for this particular occasion in full suit and tie and whatever. It's just like, whatever, man. But they basically, I found this, you know, this little video that's just, I think, I don't know, an hour and 10 minutes long or something like that. Particularly, it was just kind of annoying because all they're really doing is they're watching their first movie and just basically trashing it and just pointing out all the mistakes. You know, director of photography Sonnenfeld, Barry Sonnenfeld is just trashing on his decisions as a young first-time feature-length cinematographer, and they're just basically trashing on all their decisions, which I think I would kind of, if anyone's a really huge fan of this movie, I would actually recommend not even watching this, what do they call it? The new conversation between, I don't know, that's probably not what it's called on the disc, but I wouldn't even watch that if you're a big fan of this movie, because all they do is point out mistakes, things that you might not even want to know are there. And all they do is trash on their first movie, basically. I don't quite understand I mean, I guess it's kind of quote-unquote fun, you know, and I guess it says something maybe positive to their character that they can look at their own movie and just trash it. But I mean, at the same time, it's like, what's the point of this? It's like we're you know, Criterion puts out this beautiful new restoration of the movie, and then you've got an over hour-long video of the creators of the movie just trashing it. It kind of, I think at the end of the day, it's kind of in bad taste, and it's just like, I don't understand. It's almost like spitting in the face of the buyer of the Blu-ray, like, look at this trash you bought, and I don't even know how to describe it. I was really unimpressed with it, especially from Criterion, and you know, it's just like, I can only assume they did this video in 2016, and it's just like, I don't know. I was really surprised by it. I mean, it's just like, okay, we're basically going to sit down, watch the whole movie, and talk about all the things that are wrong and laugh at this first feature that we did, and we'll just cut out the boring bits, and we'll just feature the highlights or whatever. And as I said, that turned into a hour-long or just over an hour-long video, and it's just, I don't know, I guess if you want to just hang out with Barry Sonnenfeld and the Coen brothers for over an hour and trashing their first movie, this video is for you. We've got new conversation between author Dave Eggers, it's always one of those last names I tell you, and the Coens about the film's production from inception to release. That's really cool, 30-minute, I think it's just over 30-minute video, where it's actually really cool. It makes worth buying the Blu-ray kind of a little more worth it for me, where they're basically talking about their, the whole process, or a lot of the process of making this movie, just like it says. A little bit of before, a little bit of during, and a little bit after the movie's creation, and exploits trying to get it distributed and such. Pretty cool little video there. New interviews with composer Carter Burwell, sound mixer Skip Leavesey, and actors Frances McDormand and Emmett M. Walsh. I will say that the interviews with Frances McDormand and Emmett Walsh were very fun to watch, and God, I didn't know Emmett Walsh lived until 2016. That was kind of cool, but it's just great to hear his voice is just so classic, and obviously he's an actor. Me having grown up in the 80s and 90s and stuff, he's an actor that I grew up with. Probably the first time I can really remember seeing him was in the Steve Martin movie The Jerk, and obviously Blade Runner and Missing in Action and things like this. So just a classic actor and a classic voice that guy had, and he was just such a great guy. And just listening to him, even though he's like, I think over 80 in the interview, he's just got the same old Emmett Walsh voice, and it's just really cool to hear him. And I could just go on and on just listening to him to talk about anything, but the Frances McDormand and Emmett Walsh interviews were very good. Now it's kind of bummer because on the back all it says is trailers, but what's really cool about the trailer section of this particular Blu-ray release is it's got 3 trailers, and the first one is what they call fundraising trailer, which is really goofy. And having just seen this for the very first time today, I almost want to say that Sam Raimi very well may have directed this fundraising trailer for Blood Simple. It looks more like Evil Dead than it looks like Blood Simple would end up going on to, to look like. So it's very possible that either Sam Raimi directed it or helped with this fundraising trailer for Blood Simple. It definitely features some of the sound design from the film The Evil Dead, just like the background wind noise, and I think I heard another Evil Dead sound effect in there as well. So it's a very, very cool fundraising trailer, and I never knew anything like this existed for the movie, so it's very cool that Criterion included this in the release, and in a version that looks to be potentially an HD scan of the trailer, which I would imagine they shot on 16mm, but once again it looked like Sam Raimi made it, not the Coen brothers. Then of course they feature the original theatrical trailer, which I want to say possibly is also in HD, and then we've got a re-release trailer. I don't know if it's for the 2016 restoration. I think it probably is, come to think of it. So it's really cool. The trailer section features these 3 trailers that represent different stages of the movie's existence. The first stage being not made yet. Second stage being the original trailer, and the third one being a re-release trailer, so that's kind of cool. And then you've got your plus an essay by novelist and critic Nathaniel Rich. Big deal. I don't read that crap. I'm not a big reader, but one thing I will say about the Blu-ray release, as far as the picture goes, it's absolutely beautiful. Obviously, not having seen this movie for since frickin' 30 years, obviously the first version I probably saw with my dad was probably the first film to tape transfer that came out, I would imagine, and obviously I can't remember it for shit, but what I can say is this new 4K scan from 2016 of the film is absolutely breathtaking, and all the color, the colors and stuff just really shine through, and I didn't really have an issue with the. Of course, I'm not a fan of this movie, or I don't have much to compare it to. But I will say, just watching this version for the first time, it definitely a great presentation of this movie, and the colors are very striking, and the contrast, and being particularly taking place mostly at night and stuff. And all the blues that the Sonnenfeld and the Coen brothers complain about on their little video thing. I think the blues are absolutely. I just hate. The more I think about that, I just hate that video of them watching the movie back and ripping on their own movie. But I think the blues and the colors are fine, even if they even if they don't have a realistic reason or a place that they're coming from. I don't have much of a problem with that as the shooting through into the dark room with all these different beams of light, like you know, they rip on themselves about that, and that's the one thing that I agree with. It's like, what the fuck is, you know, why the hell are there 3 or 4 different beams of light coming from one hole in this scene? So that's the one thing I would agree with them about on all their ripping of the movie. But other things are things that just people that watch movies don't even know are happening. It's just like, give yourselves a break. But anyway, I was getting off on a tangent. The movie looks absolutely amazing in this version, and as I said, it's featured in 5.1. And as I said, I didn't watch it in 5.1, so I can't comment on the sound of this particular release. I would imagine, I mean, there's not a whole hell of a lot sonically going on in this movie to begin with, so I can't imagine it's like a Michael Bay slam bang 5.1 track or anything like that. But I'm sure they, I don't know, I would imagine they try to use 5.1 to the best of their ability. It's stupid that I'm even trying to talk about that track when I haven't heard it. When you open up the case, it looks like this. We've got a disc with the famous cigarette lighter and the booklet with the cover of him taking the gun from the guy. This is one of these booklets that simply just folds out and goes like this. We'll just give you a brief overview of the booklet like that. Sorry if you want to read what's on the booklet, you either have to buy this or look elsewhere on the worldwide internet. When you take the disc and the booklet out, this is what you see behind the disc and the booklet. So the more I think about it, the more I kind of regret buying this Blu-ray, but whatever, it was $20. Life goes on at the end of the day. I can't, I can't really recommend the movie per se very much. I mean, it's definitely a strong first film, don't get me wrong. It definitely shows a great know-how of, you know, for being your first movie in your mid-20s, it's definitely impressive. It's just simply not my kind of subject matter or necessarily. I mean, I'm much more go along with Sam Raimi's first film. Evil Dead is much more my kind of movie, but that's just me. I guess that pretty much does it for this movie and Blu-ray review. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, we'll catch you on the next one.